Hey everyone, welcome back to the deep dive. It seems like everywhere you turn these days, people are talking about AI.
Yeah, it's really everywhere, isn't it? But today we're going beyond the hype, beyond just like the theoretical and getting into the nitty-gritty of AI's impact, specifically in education.
Right, because let's face it, the world of education is changing at a dizzying pace, and it can be tough to keep up, you know what I mean?
Absolutely. So to help us navigate this, we're going straight to the source. We've got this fascinating article, AI in the Classroom, a teacher's perspective after 10 years in the trenches.
10 years, that's a solid amount of time to really see how things are playing out. And this teacher, they've been teaching both English and Spanish at the high school level right here in Texas.
Yeah, so we're not talking about some ivory tower perspective here. This is real world, boots on the ground experience with AI in action.
And for you, the learner, the one diving into all this with us, I think it's a chance to really understand, like, what are the actual opportunities, the challenges, the real-world stuff that AI is bringing into classrooms?
Exactly. We're going to unpack all of that straight from someone who's living it every day.
Okay, so let's start by getting right into it. How is this teacher actually using AI in their day-to-day teaching life?
Well, one of the most interesting things here is how much they've been able to integrate AI to make their job easier.
Easier, like less stressful, less paperwork, kind of easier?
Yeah, exactly. And also more effective in some ways. Like one of the first things they talk about is using AI for lesson planning. Imagine being able to just, plug in a learning standard and a topic and boom, AI generates a whole 45-minute lesson for you.
Wow, so no more staring at a blank page for hours trying to come up with a lesson plan?
Well, it's not quite that simple. The teacher still goes in and tweaks things, especially, when it comes to things like star prep or finals where they need to really hone in on specific things.
Sure, that makes sense, but still sounds like a huge time saver.
Oh, definitely. And they also point out that it helps with things like creating scaffolded lessons where the content builds on previous knowledge and also differentiated instructions. So making sure that the lesson is meeting the needs of all the different learners in the classroom.
I mean, that alone is like a game changer, right? Because teachers are always trying to find ways to make their teaching more personalized.
Absolutely. And then beyond lesson planning, they use AI for things like writing IEPs and 504
Oh
plans.
yeah, those could be so tricky to get right.
Exactly. And they say AI helps them craft the language in a way that's really clear and specific based on actual data and observations from the classroom.
So it's not just about using the same generic phrases over and over again. It's about making sure those documents actually reflect the individual student's needs,
Yeah, and that's so important for ensuring those students get the right support. Plus, it helps with communication with parents and other educators.
right? Because clear communication is key when it comes to those things.
For sure. And speaking of communication, they also use AI for parent communication.
Oh, interesting. Like what, writing emails?
Yeah, drafting emails, coming up with talking points for phone calls, it really helps, especially when they need to have like difficult conversations about a student who's struggling or even just sharing positive feedback.
So it's kind of like having an extra set of eyes to make sure they're communicating clearly and professionally.
Yeah, because, teachers are busy. They don't always have a ton of time to craft the perfect email or phone script.
Makes sense. I'm curious, what other ways is this teacher using AI?
Well, they also mention using it for content creation. Like they'll use it to generate discussion questions for class or even sample essays to show their students as models.
Oh, that's interesting. So it's kind of like a virtual planning partner.
That's a great way to put it. It helps take some of the mental load off and can really get those creative juices flowing.
Yeah, I bet. Okay, but this teacher also works with a lot of Spanish-speaking students, right? So how does AI play into that?
That's actually one of the areas where they find it most helpful. They use AI to translate instructions, to like scaffold texts, and even to modify assignments to make them more accessible for their Spanish-speaking students.
That's amazing. It must be such a valuable tool for bridging that language gap.
Yeah, it really is. They do say that it's not perfect. Sometimes the translations aren't completely nuanced, but overall, it's a huge help. It saves them time and it makes their teaching more inclusive.
So from the teacher's perspective, it sounds like AI is really proving to be this incredibly useful tool. It's making them more efficient, opening up new creative possibilities, and even helping them better support their diverse learners.
Definitely. And I think, for you, the learner, this highlights how AI can be applied in all kinds of professional settings to really streamline tasks and make things more efficient. But as with any new technology, there's another side to this coin.
Right, and that's what I wanted to talk about next. We've seen how the teacher is using AI, but what about the students? It sounds like they're not always using it for the intended purposes.
Yeah, and this is where things get a little tricky. The teacher mentioned seeing a lot of instances where students are basically using AI to cheat.
Oh no. Like how?
Well, they give a few examples. Some students are submitting essays that are written entirely by AI. Others are using chatbots to generate responses for online discussion forums, and some are even using AI to summarize texts they haven't even read.
So they're essentially trying to bypass the learning process altogether.
Exactly. And it's concerning because, the whole point of education is to develop those critical thinking skills, those writing skills, and they're missing out on that.
And I imagine it must be incredibly difficult for teachers to detect this kind of cheating.
Yeah, that's one of the big challenges they talk about. AI is getting so sophisticated that it can generate text that sounds very human-like. But the teacher does point out that there are some red flags, like if a student who typically struggles with writing suddenly turns in a really polished, high-level essay, that's obviously suspicious.
Yeah, that would definitely raise some eyebrows.
It would, and the teacher is really concerned about the long-term consequences of this kind of AI use. Not only is it undermining genuine learning, but it's also skewing the data that teachers use to track student progress.
It's almost like a cat and mouse game, right? Teachers are trying to catch students using AI inappropriately, and the students are trying to find ways around it.
Yeah, it's a tough situation, but the teacher also stresses that it's not all doom and gloom. There are ways that students are using AI in a positive way too.
Oh, good. I was hoping you'd say that. So what are some of the more constructive uses they're seeing?
Well, for example, some students are using AI for brainstorming ideas for writing assignments, which can be really helpful for those who struggle with that initial stage. Others are using it for grammar and vocabulary help, which can be especially beneficial for English language learners. And some are even using it to translate difficult concepts into their native language.
Oh, that's smart. So it's like using it as a personalized tutor almost.
Yeah, exactly. And there are students using AI to practice their speaking skills, like in Spanish, using AI-generated prompts.
That's pretty cool. So it seems like the key here is really about how the AI is being used, right? Like, is it being used as a crutch to avoid learning or as a genuine tool to support and enhance learning?
That's exactly the point the teacher makes. It's all about teaching students how to use AI ethically and effectively. It's about helping them understand that it can be a powerful tool for learning, but it shouldn't be used to replace their own effort and critical thinking.
And that ties back to what you were saying earlier about multiple perspectives, right? Like some students might be using AI because they're feeling overwhelmed or pressured, while others might genuinely see it as a way to learn more effectively.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important for educators to be aware of these different motivations and to have open conversations with their students about responsible AI use.
It's about creating a culture of learning where students understand the value of their own hard work and where they feel comfortable asking for help when they need it.
Absolutely. So taking a step back, if we think about all of the ways AI is being used in the classroom, both by teachers and students, what would you say are the biggest pros and cons?
Yeah, good question. Let's start with the good stuff. What are the benefits that this teacher has observed?
Well, they highlight several key advantages. First of all, AI can be a huge time saver for teachers. We've already talked about how it can help with things like lesson planning, IEP writing, and parent communication. But beyond that, they also point out that AI can actually boost their own creativity.
Oh, interesting. How so?
Well, because it takes some of those more mundane tasks off their plate, it frees them up to think more creatively about how they're teaching. And as we've discussed, AI can make it much easier to differentiate instruction, which is essential for meeting the needs of all learners. And then, of course, it can be incredibly helpful for supporting English language learners and students with IEPs.
Yeah, we've seen that firsthand. And if students are using AI responsibly, it can actually help them develop essential 21st century skills.
Right, like problem solving, critical thinking, those kinds of things.
Okay, so those are some pretty compelling advantages. But what about the other side of the coin? What are the drawbacks that this teacher has experienced?
Well, as you might expect, academic dishonesty is a major concern. They see students using AI to cheat, and that's something that we really need to grapple with as AI becomes more prevalent in education.
Yeah, we talked about that a bit earlier, and it seems like there's no easy answer.
Definitely not. And then there's the potential for skill erosion. If students are constantly relying on AI to do the heavy lifting for them, they might not develop those essential writing, critical thinking, and problem-solving skills that they need to succeed.
Yeah, that's a real worry. And, something else that concerns me is the potential for equity gaps.
Right. If access to AI tools and technology isn't equitable, then we're just going to exacerbate existing inequalities.
Exactly. And then there's the whole issue of ownership. If a student is using AI to generate their work, who really owns that work?
It's a question that raises all sorts of ethical and philosophical questions. And then lastly, there's the burden on teachers. They're already stretched thin, and now they have this added responsibility of trying to police AI use and ensure academic integrity.
Yeah, it's a lot to ask of them. It sounds like a really complex situation with both exciting potential and significant challenges.
It is, but this teacher, they're not just sitting back and wringing their hands. They're actually offering some really insightful solutions for moving forward.
Oh, that's good to hear, because I think we all know that banning AI outright isn't realistic or even desirable.
Yeah, they agree. They think that AI is here to stay, and we need to figure out how to integrate it into education in a way that's both responsible and beneficial.
So what are some of the solutions they propose?
Well, first and foremost, they stress the importance of teaching digital ethics. We need to help students understand what it means to use AI ethically and responsibly, especially in the context of education.
Makes sense. And that starts with teachers modeling those ethical practices in their own use of AI.
Exactly. They also suggest designing assignments that are more AI-proof.
AI proof, I like. So, like, what kinds of assignments are we talking about?
Things like in-class writing activities, oral presentations, projects that require students to apply their knowledge in unique ways, things that AI can't easily replicate.
That makes sense. Shifting the focus to more authentic assessments of student learning.
Yeah. And they also emphasize the importance of professional development for teachers. Teachers need to be equipped with the knowledge and skills to use AI effectively in their own teaching and to guide their students in using it responsibly.
So it's not just about policing AI use, it's about empowering teachers to be leaders in this new landscape.
Absolutely. And this is where I think one of the teacher's most profound insights comes in. They view AI as a mirror.
A mirror.
Yeah, they say that if we see students using AI to avoid learning, then maybe we need to look in the mirror and ask ourselves, are we designing our assignments and our teaching in a way that truly engages students and fosters deep learning?
Wow, that's really powerful. It's not just about the technology, it's about how we're using it and what it reflects about our values and our approach to education.
Exactly. And ultimately, this teacher believes that AI has the potential to transform education for the better, but only if we use it intentionally and ethically with a focus on student growth and well-being.
So it's about using this technology to enhance what we're already doing, not to replace it or undermine it.
Exactly. It's about using AI to support and empower both teachers and students, not to control or limit them.
That's a great point. And for you, the learner, think about how these insights about AI in education might apply to other fields you're interested in. How can AI be used to improve learning and development in any context, whether it's in a formal classroom or in a professional setting?
And going back to that idea of AI as a mirror, if you're seeing AI being used in ways that stifle creativity or discourage critical thinking, what does that tell you about the systems and structures in place? What needs to change?
That's a question worth pondering. As AI becomes more integrated into our lives, it's going to be more and more important for us to engage in these kinds of critical conversations.
Absolutely. We need to think about how we can harness the power of this technology while staying true to our values and our commitment to fostering meaningful learning experiences.
I think this teacher has given us a lot to think about. Thanks for joining us today on The Deep Dive.
Until next time.